welcome back to Coaching with the Bible. This is episode 112, season 3, episode 3, our portion of the week. This week is Lecha. Our topic this week, on friends. I'm going to talk a little bit softer today because I am in New York, traveling a little bit for work and for some friends, and I'm staying in someone's house, and it's super early in the morning, and I don't want to wake anybody up. So we're going to talk a little bit softer as we go through this today. Great to be back with everyone this week. If you haven't had a chance to check out the article I wrote or the essay I wrote based on the podcast from a couple of years ago on Abraham believing passionately, I'd really love if you had to take a few minutes to read through it. It's long, I admit it, but I feel very good about it, and I really want your feedback as to what's in there, if it's meaningful to you at all, if it's valuable at all, if it's helpful, and also how I can get better at writing. And since that's sort of one of the things for my goals this year is to take on more writing and to take some of those pieces and turn them into written pieces like that. I'd love your input, your feedback, your comments, your critiques, your criticisms, whatever you got. I'm happy to take it. So this week is is a little bit of an exploration more and of a gratitude regarding friends and friendship, more than it is anything specific about sort of a structure or a framework that a person can use in their own life, but maybe that'll come out along the way. The reality of life is that it's almost impossible for us to go through life alone. And we always are meeting people along the way. Some of them are colleagues, and some of them are just people who are passing through. And some of them become your friends. And some of them become your closest and oldest friends. And some of them become acquaintances. And some of them are friends for a time, and then they sort of go away. And then maybe you sort of touch paths again at some point later on. So we go through all kinds of relationships like this. In the course of one's life, it's probably hundreds, if not thousands, of people who come into these spaces. But there's something about those people who are your truest and your oldest friends that separate them from everyone else in your world and in your sphere. And it's not something conscious when it starts out in, pre-K or first grade or eighth grade or summer camp, that this is going to be someone who you're going to be attached to and connected to willingly and happily for the rest of your life. But that is sort of how it plays out. And it's sort of an amazing kind of thing is, like the idea that obviously there's family and there's siblings and there's cousins and they're attached to you by dint of just ancestry. But friends are the ones that you choose to be sort of those people. Like they always say, like the quote, or I don't even know if it's an actual quote, but friends are the family that you choose. And so you don't always remember it. I'm not one who always sort of thinks about it. And those of you who really know me well, I'm not such a sentimental sort of sap on a lot of these kinds of things. And but the same is true that when I reconnect, or I'm in the presence of old friends who I haven't been in touch with for a while, I sort of kick myself for not having done a better job of maintaining the relationship and staying in closer touch. And at the same time, with some of those people, even if it's been years, it's sort of like a flash connection moment, and everything is recognizable, and everything is knowable, and everything is open and out there, and no words need to pass. Instead of also it's almost magical that could be the case. So part of the reason why I'm traveling is work-related for a conference next week, but also for friends. I had the opportunity and the great joy to attend the wedding of a friend's daughter, and from our old neighborhood where we used to live before we moved. And so in that room, there's a lot of people I hadn't seen in years. And that instant of, shaking a hand, hug, wrapping an arm around somebody, that it feels right. It feels connected. And it's overwhelming on some level, and powerful on another level, and beautiful on a third level, and it's just like, wow, what were those relationships? How powerful those things were? How meaningful those things are, and that they're still there on some level, even if it's been an exceptionally long time. I have certain friends that I don't always speak to on a regular basis, but the moment we get back together and we're having dinner, we're just, together, like everything is sort of, the way it was and better. And it doesn't require that upkeep, quote unquote, on a regular basis. And the reason I mention it here this week, obviously, because I'm really filled with a real sense of appreciation and gratitude for it, and the chance that also where I'm staying for these few days and where I've been staying on these last number of trips is at friends' houses. It's great to have that opportunity to spend even a little bit of time together to, be around their families and their children, and to be around them in this way, as opposed to like, formally at a table sitting at a restaurant, but just in their home and sort of very comfortable and relaxed, kind of quote unquote in your pajamas kind of a feel, having a cup of coffee. It's just beautiful. And so I get that too, and that's very meaningful, and I'm glad that I get the opportunity to do that. But I mention it this week particularly because it is really the first time in the Bible that anyone has any sort of, I would say, friendship with anyone at all. And so in the first two portions, the story of Genesis, Adam and Eve are a couple, they're married. Cain and Abel clearly don't get along. They're brothers. They're not friends. They're brothers. Noah has nobody other than his children, and it's clearly not working out. And when you get to Abraham, interestingly enough, Abraham builds a flock, but it's not the flock that's the most interesting thing that happens there in that sense, is that as it goes through with his story, Abraham has friends. Amazingly, he's not alone. When he moves and he travels and he builds the people that he's trying to build, and he's trying to share the messages that he's trying to share, the Bible tells us that in chapter 14, verse 13, that in the story of the war, the 4 and the 5 kings, he is engaged in the war. He's brought into the war by some prisoner who comes and tells him that his kinsman, his relative Lot, had been kidnapped. But he's not alone when he's told this. Abraham is with his friends. He's sitting with Mamre, Aner, and Eshcol. The Bible describes them as sort of being brothers of each other, but they are in some sort of a covenant relationship with Abraham. The Bible verse ends that they are in some sort of a covenant with him. And the commentaries go deeper. What does it mean that they are in some sort of a covenant with him? And particularly, a commentary by the name of Rabbi David Kimchi, known as Radak, talks about that there's friendship there. They are friends. It's not just that they have some sort of a formal relationship. They're actually friends. They're almost brothers. And so later on, when actually Abraham does go out to battle, and it talks about who he takes with him to battle, and it's a little bit esoteric as to who he takes, the commentaries say he takes these 3 men with him. And then he talks later on, Abraham, when he's offered a reward, he doesn't take reward for himself. The only thing he requires is that his men, including these 3 gentlemen, are rewarded or given at least, being made whole for having laid anything out in the course of this battle. So these are his kinsmen. These are his men. In the next week's portion, when it tells the story of, at the beginning, it tells the story of Abraham fulfilling the commandment of circumcision. So the commentaries say that he sought out the wisdom of his friends as to how to go about doing that process, how to go about that ceremony, where to do it, when to do it. I mean, these are his people. They're not the only ones in Genesis. The story tells us later on in Genesis that Judah has a friend. Judah, after the story of Joseph being sold down to Egypt, so Judah is in a bad place, it seems. And he goes off to find someone or some woman to do whatever it is that he's going to do, and he goes with a friend. He goes with a gentleman by the name of Chira. Chira is literally called his friend in the Bible. And this friend is there with Judah in probably his worst moments, like that moment when he goes, later on when he has to pay for the service that was provided, he sends Chira, and there does not appear any any judgment there. Hira goes as the friend of Judah and takes care of what he needs to take care of. In a dark, difficult moment in Judah's life, Hira is there for him. That's really when, sometimes when your friendships really show, is in the darkest and the most difficult of moments. Rabbi Moshe Weinberger, in a talk that appears on yutorah.org that he gave a number of years ago on the evening before what's known as Slichot, the night when the prayers start about a week or so before the holiday of the new year, talked about this idea of God being a friend and the idea of feeling connected to God in a way that God is your friend. It's sort of an odd thing, but actually God does have friends. The Bible tells us in Isaiah that God viewed Abraham as his friend. And when we talk about the idea of the holiday of Rosh Hashanah, the new year, so it's called in Hebrew Yom Truah, a day of Truah. So Truah is a sound, is one of the sounds that is made of from the horn, the ram's horn that is blown on that day. But that word has multiple meanings, and one of those meanings is rooted in friendship. The idea when the Bible says that, love your neighbor as yourself, the term in Hebrew is a re'ah. A re'ah is a friend. That's the same root word as the sound of the shofar. So you have this notion of friendship that is really in a lot of different places, in a lot of different ways, and even to the point where when we bless a new bride and groom, they should be true, trusted lovers and friends, is the term that we use. And so it's everywhere. And it's not something that we can dismiss. It's not something that we can diminish. It's something that we have to not only appreciate, but really develop and really work on. And so it's the friends that you have in all these different moments, for good and for bad, that really make life worthwhile and meaningful and powerful, and in some cases, when it's really difficult, actually livable. If you look in the Bible for one last example, I know I'm getting very biblical today, is David and Jonathan. David and Jonathan are the epitome of the greatest love friendship in the entire Bible. They are held up as the paradigm of a friendship that is built on the friendship itself, irrespective of all of the drama and difficulty that surrounds it. Jonathan is the son of the king. David is the heir apparent to the kingship, taking Jonathan's seat as the king, and yet they're friends like brothers. There's nothing closer than David and Jonathan in terms of an example of great friendship. Their story is powerful. If you haven't read it in a while, I would recommend going back to Samuel, the book of Samuel, and rereading that story. Their relationship is just unbelievable to really think about and to read through. So friendship is, it's a gift, right? Friendship is a gift, and it's important to sort of keep that in mind and to think about those people who are your friends and the people who are the ones that you call friends, whether you're close with them today or not. I'm not sure that necessarily matters. But appreciate also, I think we got to get a little bit more formal today in coaching with the Bible. There are different kinds of friends. Sort of appreciate that that's true. Not just best friends and sort of friends. That's not what I mean. There are friendships that are based on different things. The root of those relationships is not the same. They come from different places. And so I was reading an article earlier by a gentleman by the name of Bradley Stolberg, who writes a lot about personal growth and writes a number of books. And so he's quoting from Aristotle, and Aristotle delineated, I'm pretty sure I saw this in other places too, delineated three kinds of friendships. There are friendships based on utility. So you sort of get something out of the relationship, let's say. Two is friendships based purely on pleasure. People you have a good time with. And three is friendships that are based on virtue. So you have a value system that's similar, and so you're able to sort of connect and have a kinship that way. All those three are true. And at some points in our lives, we have all of them. At some points in our lives, we're leaning in on others more than one. So maybe in our teenage years, we're leaning on the ones who are pleasure-seeking friends rather than our value or virtue-seeking friends. That might be true. But as we grow older, maybe we're sort of flipping the switch and changing the nature of those relationships. But it's important to sort of pay attention and be aware of it. And it could be that if you're in a state where, let's say, admittedly, in some cases, you're shedding friends, certain people at a certain point in your life were valuable and meaningful and important to you, but now they become, a drag on your life, or you're really not in the same space anymore, or that person brings you down. That could be the case, that someone who had been a longtime friend for many, many years is now a person who, being in their presence makes life unlivable and very difficult. And so all those things make a lot of sense, and all those things are true and can be true. And it's not a self-judgment about you that you're changing, shifting, moving. That's totally normal. And so here I think it's important to sort of appreciate what that is with respect to our friendships. It doesn't require a lot, quality over quantity. It's probably true, but also appreciate that being alone isn't good. It's also not healthy. The scientific research on it is that having healthy relationships actually gives you the opportunity to live longer. So people who are living in, older retirement communities per se are living much longer. It's not simply just the fountain of youth. It could be to some degree the fountain of friendship. Having a lot of people around you, yes, they're aging and maybe they have issues and they're not as well or physically, whatever it is. But aging with your friends actually helps you actually age longer. You live longer based on that. So it's important to sort of have these things in mind as we're developing and thinking about our friendships and our kinships, and knowing that these are the people that are around us, and really putting people around us that are best for us. So we can be, what I would say, picky, choosy around our friends, and we can be this, sort of, I would say, discerning as to who we sort of keep those friendships with. But at the same time, we should be open to the idea that we need to go further with some of those friendships and do more with some of those relationships. And so if it's some people that, you've lost connection with, but you want it back, so this is this week's challenge, to reach out to that person and, try to rekindle it. And it's going to be uncomfortable, and step into that discomfort because you think there's something meaningful there. And, offer a sincere apology. Explain why you're reaching out and see what happens. Try it with one person. See if there's one person on your list of, that old friend who you've been either avoiding, you've been unwilling to go deep on, you've been unwilling to reconnect with, and see if there's something that you can do there. There's no great quote on this with respect to it, but I can share with you one that I thought was actually very powerful. And this will end with Coaching with the Bible this week. So what we talked about this week is a real gratitude and appreciation sense of friendship and kinship and connection with people in our own lives, the people that we've lived with and grown with, and even those we've lost touch with, that there's an appreciation of those friendships and those kinships. It is something biblical in nature to some degree. And we can really learn from the different kinds of friends that we have, and the friends that really bring us up and add value in our lives, that give us happiness and joy, and give added levels of meaning to those certain moments in our own lives. And here's the quote that I saw that I thought I really liked a lot to end Coaching with the Bible for this week, from Helen Keller. I would rather walk with a friend in the dark than alone in the light. That is Coaching with the Bible for this week. Look forward to seeing you next week.